Alrighty, let's see. I'm trying to make sure I'm connected to both YouTube and Facebook. Okay, so I have YouTube going. Okay. Alrighty. Think I'm live on both YouTube and Facebook. All right. So hi everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Sunday Social. I don't think tonight will be as long as last week. Maybe about 30 minutes or so. I don't know. I guess it just depends on how many people come in and have things to say and things to talk about. But I do have a couple things planned just from things that have been this week. So hopefully, if anybody has, and I got a lot of tabs open, so this computer is probably going to be a little bit slow. But so if anybody, we'll start by, asking if anybody has any questions about the exam or about anything related to social work or just anything in general. And then I'll get started with what I have planned. And let me check and see. So no questions on Facebook. Okay. All right, let's see. Hello, I am always glad when your notification comes up. Oh, good. Thanks. Make sure you watch as much as possible. Invite your colleagues and your friends. Have any questions? And where are you from? And this is for Jay Gushard. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, that goes perfectly with something that I have planned to talk about this evening too. But yeah, where are you from? And I'm in Virginia. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. Do you have any questions though before I get started? And I'll just wait for a second. But yeah, so while we're waiting for other people to see if anybody has any questions, so the first thing I want to bring up is just a lady contacted me earlier this week and told me that she found a supervisor. So last week we talked about supervision, and I talked about how someone had asked me if I knew of anybody. If I knew how to find a supervisor in your state. And she actually told me that she went to Psychology Today and found a supervisor. And I didn't even think about using Psychology Today. It's a website that you can go on. I use it sometimes to help my patients find counselors and therapists, and just to find a resource for them. But I didn't think to look for a supervisor on Psychology Today. So I'll put that link in the description box to Psychology Today, and you can go on there and look for a specific kind of therapist, and what areas they specialize in, which populations, and that kind of thing. So that's the first thing here. So it says, I just finished my MSW, so I am studying everything I can. My application is still pending, or it's still in pending status. Okay, so when you say that you're studying everything that you can, what exactly do you mean by that? Are you studying everything that you learned from school, like your textbooks and your notes and that kind of thing? Because that's what I did when I finished grad school. I studied everything just because I didn't know how to prepare for the exam. And I felt like it was going to be just like any other exam that you would study for in school, but it's not like that at all. So I don't want you to overwhelm yourself studying a whole lot of stuff from school, which you do need to study stuff from school, but I don't want you to overwhelm yourself blindly studying. So I would say if you don't know about the KSAs already, to make sure you have a copy of the KSAs to kind of give you an outline of what you need to study for and what you need to be prepared for. Because a lot of stuff that we learn in school is not going to be on the exam. The exam is scenario based. And so you do need to know, theories and all of the main people like Freud and Piaget and all those people. But there's a method to it. So I don't want you to just study a whole bunch of stuff and not have a plan. So the KSAs is a good way to start that out. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was I'm studying the theories. I appreciate that. I will work on the KSAs. Okay, good. Another thing I wanted to talk about was I mentioned in one video before having a meetup. So, it's really hard to have a meetup when people are all over the country, and I don't really know a good meeting place. So I'm gonna just throw this out there again. If anybody wants to meet up, it will probably be around September to give people enough time to prepare. And then also I guess school will be back in session by then, and you can have, things planned out, babysitters if necessary, and that kind of thing. But it's nothing set in stone yet. Still just throwing it out there. A lady reached out to me and said that she would help me plan it. She lives in Connecticut. I'm in South Carolina. So I'm just looking to see how many people would be interested in meeting up somewhere at some point. So that's that. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about was a documentary that I just learned about today. So if you remember last Sunday, I talked about narcissist and narcissistic personality disorder. And there is a lot of information about that. I'm fascinated by it because I've been affected by a narcissist or two in my life. And so I've been really looking into that. So there's a documentary called Dirty John, The Dirty Truth. And so I'm planning on watching that tonight to look at it and see. It's about a woman who dated a man who was a narcissist, and he portrayed himself to be something that he wasn't. He told her that he was an anesthesiologist, and obviously he took her through hell. So I'm going to watch that tonight, and I'll report back on that next week. But if anybody wants to watch that so that we can talk about it next week, then please do. So that's another thing. And again, that documentary is called Dirty John, The Dirty Truth. It's about a narcissist. Initially, I was told that it was on Netflix, but I looked for it on Netflix. It's not on Netflix. It's actually on YouTube. So Oxygen had a documentary on it, and that's on YouTube. And then there's also, I think Bravo might have a documentary on it, or a series on it, where they have different episodes. So I'm going to watch that, and hopefully, y'all will watch it too. And then we can talk about it during the next Sunday social. So someone asked about navigating dual relationships and preventing that when possible, especially when you're innately helpful. So dual relationships, and I was hoping that the person would be on here so I could ask for clarification on exactly what they wanted to know about dual relationships. But I'm assuming that they wanted to talk about when you are the professional, if you have a client and you also have a second relationship with that client, like maybe you and the client go to church together. Let's say you're their case manager and y'all go to church together, or maybe you're their therapist and y'all also have the same dance instructor or something like that. So this person was asking about how you navigate dual relationships. For me personally, I haven't experienced any dual relationships as far as being involved in two separate places with the client. So the most that I've done was I've seen a client in the grocery store before. I've seen a client at a restaurant before. And it's always so awkward because you kind of, you know, the person, so you don't want to ignore them. But I think it's good to follow that person's lead. So you don't necessarily want to just walk up to the person and say, hey, you know, it's really awkward if you've ever been in a situation, because when I ran into a patient at the grocery store, I saw the patient and her mother, and I immediately tried to avoid them because we had been trying to get in touch with the patient and her mom, and they were not answering the calls. They were not returning any calls. And so for me to run into them at the grocery store, I didn't want to say anything to her because I didn't want her to think that I was confronting her in the grocery store about not answering the calls. So it was really awkward. So I tried to avoid them. I think that she saw me from afar, but it's so awkward to run into your clients in public and stuff like that. But you know, if they don't say anything to me, then I don't say anything to them. If they speak, then I'll speak. I make sure not to talk about anything related to what I'm working with them on a professional level, just because it's kind of embarrassing. I won't say it's embarrassing, but it's putting their business out there, and I don't feel like that I should do that, and I don't want to discuss that kind of thing in public. So, and it said, and her comment said, it's a case of financial elder abuse. So like I said, the lady that sent this is not on here. At least I don't see her on here. So I don't know exactly what her example was. Let's see, what else? Another thing I wanted to talk about was ACEs, and you probably may have heard of ACEs before, which are adverse childhood experiences. And so I went to a training that was given by the United Way earlier this week, and we talked about the ACEs. So a lot of people know about the ACEs. There are some people who don't know about the ACEs, just like some people don't know about KSAs and all these other acronyms and stuff that we have. But the ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and it's a test. So you can have an ACE score, and I took the thing that they gave us here, and I'll just go down this list and talk about some of it. But so adverse childhood experiences are basically things that happen in your childhood that can affect your adulthood and can affect your life expectancy, according to these studies that the CDC has done and other agencies have done. Adverse childhood experiences can be linked to risky health behaviors, chronic health conditions, low life potential, early death, and that kind of thing. So these are things that happen to you as a child. And I take these glasses off because of the glare on the screen. But so they gave us this list of things, and they ask you prior to your 18th birthday if any of these things have happened to you. And if they have, then you give yourself a 1, and then you go down and you add them up. So the first thing is, prior to your 18th birthday, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? And this is from the ACE interface, and I'll put that in the description box as well. So this is not something that I made up. This is something that's directly from the ACE interface. And again, I'll put the information in the description box. This is not any piracy or copyright infringement or anything like that. And then it says, or, you know, did a parent act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? And so based on each person's perception of that question, if you felt like you were or that you had, you would give yourself a 1. And then it has number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured. And if you had that, you would give yourself a 1. And all these you would give yourself a 1 on. The third thing is, did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way, or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? Number 4 is, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Number 5, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Number 6, was a biological parent ever lost to you through divorce, abandonment, or another reason? Number 7, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes, often, or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a knife or a gun? And that's all in one question, number 7. So they're asking about mom or stepmom specifically. And that's a big one, because I gave myself a 1 for that one, because as you know, if you've watched any of my videos, that my father was abusive to my mom and they got divorced. So they put a lot of information on that number 7 when it comes to the mother, and it stood out to me because they didn't put the same thing for the father, which, I mean, it kind of makes sense, because most abuse in the household, intimate partner violence, is the male on female. But I'm kind of interested to know if things are changing with the changing times, because a lot of women are abusive now too. And so I would be interested in, and this is from 2015. So here we are 4 years later and things have changed. So I would be interested to see if they would add, the same thing and say, was your father or your stepfather, because it's becoming a little bit more equal now. I wouldn't say equal as in 50-50, but I would say that women are abusive more now too. I don't know what percentage I would put it at, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it's 50-50. I do still think that the male is more abusive towards the female, but females are, of course, as we know, becoming more violent with men as well. So number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Number 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And then number 10, did a household member go to prison? So those are the 10 questions on this ACE interface thingy. And again, I'll put it on the description box, in the description box. So I ended up with a score of 3. And then also, this also talks about toxic stress and how it affects your body and that kind of thing. But with the ACEs, which is what I was just reading, because I see several more people just joined us. I'm talking about the ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. So you may have heard of this, you may have not, but it's something that I learned about in grad school, and that I've went to a training on that was given by the United Way earlier this week. And so they link these adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, to risky behaviors as an adult, chronic health conditions as an adult, and low life potential and possibly early death. So if you experienced any of this stuff as a child, the higher your score is, the more likely you'll have problems in your adult life, as far as health issues, mental health issues, risky health behaviors, being promiscuous, that kind of thing. So what are ACEs? ACEs are serious childhood traumas. And this is directly from the Children's Trust of South Carolina. So I'll put the link to that too. Again, I'm not about piracy and plagiarism. So I'm going to put the link to all of this stuff in the description box. But it says ACEs are serious childhood traumas that result in toxic stress that can harm a child's brain. This toxic stress may prevent a child from learning, from playing in a healthy way with other children, and can result in long-term health problems. And some of the health problems that we talked about would be like high blood pressure, heart problems, diabetes, that kind of thing. And it says, how do ACEs affect your health? And it affects you through stress. So if you've grown up in a home with domestic violence, and you're hyper vigilant all the time, that does something to you physiologically, to your body. So and I'm not a doctor, of course, so I'm not going to try to explain this stuff. But I mean, we know when we're stressed out or we're anxious, you can feel that. Like if you're anxious, even about taking the exam or taking any exam, you feel physically in your body the stress of it. If you are anxious and you can't sleep for some reason because something is, have a lot of things running through your mind and that kind of thing, you feel that stress in your body. So imagine being a child, and some of you may have been children that experienced this stuff. I know I did, because I came from a violent home, not a violent home, but I came from a home where there was domestic violence. So I know the feeling of hiding in the closet and feeling that toxic stress because I'm listening to the fighting that's happening in the other room. So that's how the ACEs can affect your health, is through stress. So it says frequent or prolonged exposure to ACEs can create toxic stress, which can damage the developing brain of a child and affect your overall health. Now, everybody that experiences ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, that's not to say that everybody who experiences these are going to automatically, feel or grow up to have health issues and problems and stuff like that. But if you have a higher number of ACEs, like my number is 3, like I said, but if you have, let's say, an 8 or a 9 or a 10, then you probably do have, health issues and mental health issues, and you could have a lower life expectancy because you are engaging in things that are not good for your health. So that's basically what the ACEs is. It's kind of a questionnaire where you can answer, you come up with a score, and then you see the likelihood of you having issues as an adult. And so it says that they talk about survival mode. So a survival mode response to toxic stress increases the child's heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, and muscle tension. Their thinking brain is knocked offline. Self-protection is their priority. In other words, I can't hear you. I can't respond to you. I'm just trying to be safe. So we also talked about the fight, flight, or freeze, which I'm sure most of you have heard of as well. That's your reaction to this toxic stress. So if you have grown up in an environment where it's not safe, there could be violence, there could be screaming, there could be yelling, there could be drugs and all this stuff, and it's just tension in your body, and you grow up around that all your life. When you get out of that environment and you go somewhere else that may be a little bit more safe, if you hear a noise, and that's where the trauma comes in. That's where people have PTSD, because they grew up in these situations, and then you may get to a safe place and then something triggers you, and then you become hypervigilant and you have all of these reactions where you're either going to fight, you're going to flight or run, or you're going to freeze up. And so that's what that's about. And so it says adverse childhood experiences can include emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect. And so it's always important to distinguish what is abuse and what is neglect. So when something is neglected or someone is neglected, that means that their needs are not being met. So if you have a child, let's say that someone is accused of child neglect, that means that they are not providing for that child's basic needs. So their food, housing, shelter, all those things on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those things are not being met. That's what neglect is. When you're abusing somebody, then that's more physical, could be mental, where you are harming that person physically, mentally, emotionally, maybe even spiritually. So when they talk about emotional abuse, that means, you know, you're talking to this person, you're belittling them, you are calling them names and telling them they're nothing, they're not going to amount to anything, that kind of thing. But when you talk about emotional neglect, that means that, you know, you're not giving that person what they need emotionally. It could be a hug, it could be affection, it could be skin to skin contact with the baby, that kind of thing. And the same thing with physical abuse and physical neglect, and then of course sexual abuse. And then it also says that adverse childhood experiences can include a mother that was treated violently, household substance abuse, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, incarcerated household member, bullying by another child or an adult, witnessing violence outside the home, witness a brother or sister being abused, racism, sexism, or any other form of discrimination, being homeless, and national disasters and wars. So lastly, about the ACEs, it says exposure to childhood ACEs can increase the risk of adolescent pregnancy, alcoholism and alcohol abuse, depression, heart disease, illicit drug use, intimate partner violence, liver disease, multiple sexual partners, sexually transmitted diseases, smoking, suicide attempts, and unintended pregnancies. So when you think about all of this, of course, we are social workers. We work in this field. This is the stuff that we see every day. All of this is related to the ACEs, your adverse childhood experiences. So when you do your biopsychosocial assessment or whatever kind of assessment you do, that's the reason why we do it. We have to know what the patient or the client's background is. And basically, that's what we're assessing for, adverse childhood experiences. You know, you're going to ask how that person grew up, how their family was, how they were with their siblings, how their home environment was, to try to figure out what causes them to be in the situation that they're in, to cause them to come and see you so that you could help them help themselves. So I thought that the ACEs training was pretty good. Like I said, I'll put this information in the description box in case you want to go and take a closer look at it. It was my understanding, though, that there were 17 ACEs or questions that they would ask. But this only has 10. And again, this is from 2015, so maybe it's not as updated. So that's that. Just for those who have joined us, because I see the number increased a little bit since I first started talking, we talked about psychology today and using that as a way to find a supervisor. So someone contacted me and told me that they found a supervisor. We also talked about potentially doing a meetup, and I would plan to do that in around September. So if anybody is interested, since we have people from all over the country, I need to see who's interested, to see where you're located so that we can narrow down a location that would be central to where everyone is, and that wouldn't cost a whole lot. Like, it's not going to be anything extravagant, maybe just a weekend somewhere to just do some self-care. And I have a lady that has volunteered to help me with that. If anybody wants to help, then you're welcome to. And then also I talked about the documentary that I just learned about today called Dirty John, The Dirty Truth. That's a documentary that's about a guy that's a narcissist. If you were here last Sunday, then you know about the narcissist and the conversation that, or discussion that we had about narcissists last week. And then also I talked about navigating dual relationships if you were to ever come across a patient or client in public. And then lastly, another thing that I came across on Instagram, which I thought was important to talk about. So of course we know that we need to be culturally competent because we have clients and patients that are from different places, different walks of life, and that kind of thing. And so I came across a post on Instagram about a lady. Well, it's a lady. If you've ever watched Orange is the New Black, there's the lady that plays Crazy Eyes. I think that's her. Let me look. I think it's her. Let's see, what did I do with it? So I came across the post on Instagram where she was talking about how people would pronounce her name. And so it stuck out to me because I've worked with almost every population that you can think of. And I've met people with all kinds of different names and different spellings and different pronunciations. And so I always made it a point to make sure that I not only spelled people's name correctly, but also pronounce it correctly. And so that's why when the lady that's on now and she's sent the message here, I didn't want to chop up her last name. So I asked her if I pronounced it correctly, and I didn't know if I did or not. But I always try to make sure that I do. And I think it's very important that we do, because sometimes we'll come across people who have names that are quote unquote ghetto or ratchet, or it's something that's not normal. My name is Ashley, very normal, very typical, but I know a lot of people that have very creative names and names that have different meanings, and some of them are hard to spell and some of them are hard to pronounce, but that is who that person is. And I think that it's very important that we get it right. Even though some people's names may be hard to pronounce or hard to spell, you need to get their names right. Like, what's in a name? People's name defines them. Like that identifies them. So I think it's very important that we get the name right as far as the spelling and the pronunciation. So I'm gonna play this little 2-minute or maybe a minute and a half sound bite, and then we'll talk about it. So the lady's name is Uzamaka, and it's spelled Uzoamaka. So, you know, if I were to come across a name like that, of course, like I think sometimes we just intentionally butcher people's names because it looks hard to pronounce, and we don't even give it any effort to try to even pronounce it. And I don't think that that's fair to our clients, because and I've met people who have a name that's difficult to pronounce, and so they just let you call them anything. And I just don't think that's fair, because I mean, it's just not. So I'm gonna play this, and let's see. And if you, I mean, do y'all agree? Like, I see people. Let me check on Facebook and see if anybody has said anything here. Okay. Nothing on Facebook. So most people here are on YouTube. So let's see. Okay. So, okay, here it is. Uh-oh. I don't want to keep y'all waiting, but it's starting over right now. So let me just bear with me for a second. Okay. So, and I think this is the lady named Crazy. Her name on Orange is the New Black is Crazy Eyes. And then we have someone here that says you are so right. Yeah. So I mean, this is what I mean. So let me see here. You know how it takes a long time for them to start over on Instagram when you're looking at a sound bite. So, okay, come on. I hate that this is live, so I have to wait for it to come through. Hold on, I'm coming, y'all. I'm coming. Okay. Well, maybe it did start over. Bear with me, y'all. Bear with me. It's only a few more seconds. I wish you could just start it over. Hold on. Okay.
My family named me Uzamaka. That's my full name.
I hate that I can't.
The road is good. Isn't that a beautiful name? Thanks, Mom. I got it for my birthday. Ozamaka. But I grew up in a small New England town, and there weren't a lot of Nigerian Americans living in my region. And I would have teachers or anyone, neighbors, try and say my name, and it would be Azumeka, Uzamaka, Uzakuza, any version that they could think of other than Ozamaka. So I came home from school one day, and my mom was cooking in the kitchen, as she is wont to do, the mother of 5 children. And I said to her, Mommy, can I ask you a question? She said, I said, can you call me Zoe? My family named me. And I never asked her again. And what is amazing now, standing in my womanhood, in my power, is I wouldn't change my name for a second. I'm so proud of that name and what stems behind it and what it represents. Can you call me Zoe? And she stopped and gave that mother look that only mothers know and have, and said, why? And I said, because no one can say Ozamaka. And she looked at me and she said, if they can learn to say Tchaikovsky and Michelangelo and Dostoevsky, then they can learn to say Ozamaka.
And then it goes back to the end of it. So, I mean, and I
never asked her again.
Okay, so I touched the screen just so it wouldn't go back out. But yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. Like, if we can pronounce and I won't say we, because I can't pronounce half of the stuff that some of these other names and stuff are, but you have to try. So I honestly think that that's true, because a lot of African names, Latino names or Hispanic names, they are different and they're not American names. And so it is different and it is kind of hard to pronounce. But I think that when we work with our clients and our patients, we need to make an extra effort to make sure that we spell and pronounce people's names correctly, because that is a part of making sure that person has dignity and respect, and that we are giving them their dignity and respect. Because I mean, think about it. If like my name is so basic, it's so simple, Ashley. Like I always hated my name because I'm like, it's just so plain, but it's easy for people to, nobody ever calls me the wrong name. Nobody ever mistaken. Well, some people will spell it Ashley, which is how I spell it. Some people might spell it Ashleigh or Ashlei, and there are different ways to spell Ashley, but sometimes people will spell it Ashley, and that does bother me sometimes, because I'm like, I could see if you spelled it, in a Ashlee or something like that. But when they get the E and the L mixed up, that does bother me sometimes. But I really think that, for people who have names that are a little different and unique, we need to make that effort to make sure that we spell their names correctly and say them correctly. So I agree, because people have a tendency to pronounce my name wrong a lot. Right. So I just wanted to talk about that, because some people they are very prideful of their names, just like she did, just like she is. So what I do, because like I said, I know it's not easy for some people to pronounce everything, but when I would come across a client or a patient was a little hard for me to pronounce or say, I would phonetically spell it out on top of their paper, and I would practice it until I said it correctly. And I always ask, I would attempt to say it, and then I'll say, am I pronouncing your name correctly? And I ask them, how do they say it? How do they pronounce it? And then I will phonetically spell it out, and I make sure that I get it right after that, or at least try to get it right. And most of the time I get it right because I make that effort to get it right. But sometimes things can be a little difficult. So I am taking a break from studying to jump on tonight. Oh, hi, Jacqueline. We're just talking about making sure that we pronounce people's names correctly and spell them correctly as well whenever we're working with patients and clients. So thanks for joining us. So yeah, so she, and also, you know, some people have a certain accent or I guess for lack of a better word, I'll say accent right now, when they pronounce their name. So when she pronounced it, she said Uzamaka, Uzamaka. She kind of like dragged it out. It wasn't like Uzamaka. Like you don't want to sound like you're trying to phonetically pronounce it. So you want to get into it the way that they pronounce it. She's Uzamaka, Uzamaka. So you just have to make that effort. I mean, because if we're going to be social workers, let's do it. Like, don't half step it. Like, make sure that you're treating people with dignity and respect. Make sure that you are giving them and treating them like people. You know, don't just, oh, well, her name looks like Uzama. And then some people will intentionally butcher it too. It's just, that's something that always bothered me. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So, if you are just joining us, I'm going to leave this up because I don't want to drag on tonight because it's just one of those nights where I want to go ahead and watch this documentary that I told y'all about. It's called Dirty John, The Dirty Truth, and it's on YouTube, and it's about a woman that dated this narcissistic man who he tried to kill her daughter, and her daughter ended up killing him because he couldn't get to the mom, so he went after the daughter and attacked her in the parking lot, and the daughter ended up stabbing him to death in self-defense. So, yeah. Any questions or comments before we get off? And I'm going to leave the topics that I discussed in the description box. Again, we talked about psychology today to find a supervisor. We talked about potentially doing a meetup in September, just getting a feel of how many people would actually want to do something like that and where you're from, what state you're in, so that we could find a central location to meet for just the weekend, nothing extravagant, just to get together, meet, network, and do some self-care and have a meal or something a few meals rather for the weekend. We talked about the documentary that's on YouTube. We talked about when you run into your patients or your clients in public, how to handle that kind of situation. Follow their lead in most instances. Don't talk about the work that you do with them in public if they don't bring it up. And even if they do bring it up, just kind of change the subject. You don't want to, especially if you're working on them in like a healthcare setting or something like that, where you're talking about chronic conditions and medical information. You probably don't want to discuss that kind of thing in public with your patient or your client. We also talked about the adverse childhood experiences. And then, of course, making sure we give our patients and clients respect, put some respect on their names, and make sure we pronounce them and spell them correctly. Jacqueline says she's from Connecticut. So I have a lady that's in Connecticut who asked if she could help me with planning a meetup. So, I mean, I don't mind flying out to somewhere that's close to y'all. If it makes more sense, if we have more people that are up north, I don't mind planning. Because like I said, it would be in September. So if there are more people up north and y'all want to meet somewhere up north, like in September, then that's fine with me. Just let me know, and we can try to plan something, and I'll catch a flight out and book a hotel somewhere, and I'll follow your lead, whatever. So y'all reach out to me and let me know what y'all want to do. Any questions or comments, thoughts, cases you want to talk about or anything before I end the live tonight? And again, I'm going to put all this stuff in the description box of where you can find these ACEs and information on all this stuff. And let me check Facebook and see if anybody is here with any questions. No. Okay. All right. So if nobody has anything else, I want to go to the warmth. I am so over the cold up here. Yeah. So would it be warm in September, or would it be still, well, at that point getting back cold again? It doesn't matter to me. Like I said, I'm down for whatever, as long as I have enough time to plan and book a flight or whatever. So what I'll do is put a poll on Facebook, on the Day-to-Day Social Work Facebook page. That way I can get an idea of how many people would want to meet up and where you're from. And on that poll, I want you all to put where you're from. So you would vote yes or no that you would want to do a meetup, and then you would put in the comment section where you're from, so I can kind of get an idea. And the lady that contacted me, her name is Misty. She lives in Connecticut, so she said that she would help me plan this stuff. If anybody else wants to help or has any ideas, then just let me know. All right, so doesn't look like anybody else has any questions. So I guess that's it for tonight. I'll see y'all next Sunday. And please send topics. If you want to review a case, if you have a question about a case, or you have any particular questions about the exam, then let me know, like, so I can have more stuff to talk about other than the stuff that I come prepared with. And then also, what else was I going to say? Oh, with the tutoring, I am starting back tutoring now. I'm just now getting back into that. All I have left to do now is to make the pre-recorded videos of the new material that I have. And then I'm going to add those to the other videos that I had, and the prices will stay the same. I'm not going to increase the price on the videos. So if you want to do the pre-recorded package, then that's an option. If you want to do live tutoring, that's an option. And I'm starting to book live tutoring again. I was wanting to do a live session once a week and have a discounted price of $35 for that live session, but we would have to have a certain number of people to agree to attend that live session every week. So it's going to be hard to do that because everybody's schedules are different. So that's the plan. But live tutoring is starting back, and I'm updating the pre-recorded, and we're going to go ahead and hit the road running for 2019 and see if we can get a lot more people to pass their exams. It says a question for next time: how to learn medications with a shortcut tip. Struggling with this. The medications are really hard because it's really memorization. I have a video on that on the YouTube channel. And what I really said in that video was of course, use flashcards, and then also looking at the prefixes or the suffixes rather. So you have lorazepam, diazepam, clonazepam, all the PAMs, like those are kind of in the same medication group. So like look at those kind of things. Kind of like wordplay. So see how you can group some of the stuff up based on the prefixes or the suffixes of the medications. And also there was a link to, I think it was from last Sunday or maybe the Sunday before that. If you look back on those Sunday socials in the description box, I put a link to knowyourmeds.com, I think it was, or something like that. So if you want to use that as a way to understand what the medications are and what they're used to treat, then that would be good. And then with the medications though, on the exam, a lot, I don't know, Jacqueline, if that's or if you'll be taking the exam for the first time, but there aren't a whole lot of medication questions on the exam. And I took mine in 2015. So here we are 4 years later. So I'm not really sure what is on the exam at this point, but from the people who I've tutored who have reported back to me about what was on their exam, a lot of people are still saying that they only had like 2 or 3 medication questions. So I do think it's good for you to learn them, but I don't think that you would want to spend a whole lot of time stressing over the medications. But of course, you know, one question could be the difference in passing or failing the exam. So I do understand that it is important to study those medications and learn them, because it could be the difference between passing and failing the exam. All right, so that's it for tonight. Happy studying. I hope y'all have a good week. And if y'all have questions and stuff throughout the week, leave me a message. If you want to get tutored, let me know. You can get a free online consultation at daytodaysocialwork.wix.com/my site. That's the website, which is also going to be in the description box on this video. And I'm going to get off because I'm feeling congested, as you could probably hear, and it's not good. All right, so it says, thank you so much for the info you shared. Good night, blessings. All right, good night. Y'all have a good night, a good week, and I'll see y'all next Sunday if God's willing. Have a good night.